feature presentation.
Okay?
We're good. Can they hear me?
They can't, so I'm just telling them to go through and we'll jump up together when you're at the end.
All right. Sounds good. So for those of you that didn't get my name in the beginning, my name is Keith Hines. I work at CohnReznick. I'm a campus recruiter there. I cover the New York metro area, so basically I cover 5 different offices for our firm. We're all the way from White Plains, New York City, New York, Mountain Jericho, Long Island, New York. Then in New Jersey, I'm over in our Roseland office, but we also have an office in Eatontown, New Jersey as well. So everyone from Jersey here? All right. And all right, who's just at like South Jersey? I know you said you were South Jersey. Anyone else? Central? Do you guys use Central? I know some schools are questionable about that. All right, North Jersey then? All right, cool. So I started with the firm about 7 months ago. Prior to that, I actually worked at another public accounting firm down in the Philadelphia area. I was doing campus recruiting there for about 3.5 years, moved to New Jersey, and so with the move, I found CohnReznick. So the experience thus far has been great. We can definitely talk about the firm, afterwards. I talk about the firm all the time, and I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing the same spiel about a firm and everything, we have to offer. We can go into that in a little detail. I figure we'll talk about something that's probably a little bit more applicable to what you guys are going through now. I know majority of you are sophomores or juniors, a couple seniors in the back there, but hopefully this is helpful. I've seen it all. A lot of this is going to seem pretty basic, right, and self-explanatory, or maybe even common sense. But again, I've been doing this for a little while now. I've conducted a lot of interviews with a lot of students, and so everything I'm talking about here is something I've seen. All right, and we'll go through a lot of that. I want you guys to ask as many questions as you can as well. This is about you. It's not about me. So interviewing. Purpose of an interview. Interview provides an opportunity for both the organization and candidate to trade information and determine if they are a good fit for each other. Right? Seems pretty basic, pretty standard. I think the most important part, of this is that it's an opportunity for you to learn if the firm or the company is a good fit. I think a lot of students take that for granted. Take advantage of the time when you have one-on-one opportunity with professionals. Whether that be an interview setting, a career fair, whatever. Take advantage of that time because it's really valuable experience that not everybody gets. So use that interview. Make sure you have questions. We'll go into some of that stuff as well. But take that opportunity to really figure out and realize that this is a place you can see yourself working at. All right. So before the interview, now, in my opinion, I think that this is almost more, as important, if not more important, than while you're at the interview. Being prepared, being ready, is going to make your interview experience much better. Okay, so research the industry and the company, the job, know what position you applied for when you are interested, and why you're interested. So again, seems pretty basic, but a lot of students will just mass send out their resumes because the Career Center makes it really easy to do that. And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Make sure you're applying for jobs that you're actually interested in. Make sure, when you're talking to recruiters, you're talking about the right job. So keep that in mind if you're just kind of sending out your information, your resume. Review your resume, prep questions. So I would say 90% of the questions you're going to get during a one-on-one formal interview is going to be based off of your resume. In most cases, the person interviewing you, especially at this at internship level or entry level, the only thing they're gonna know about you is from that piece of paper, right? Unless for some reason, maybe they met you on campus once or twice, but other than that, that's the only thing they're gonna know about you. So that's where the majority of their questions are gonna come from, right? So be prepared. It's not rocket science, the type of questions we come up with. We don't just, randomly like make them up, right? You can look at your resume and start kind of thinking, okay, well, if I was looking at my resume, this is what I would ask about myself. I would, ask about my experience working at, the business department at the school, or, I'd ask about my experience in Beta Alpha Psi and what I do there. So you can start to kind of think and prep yourself with questions like that. Prepare a list of questions to ask. We kind of, I touched on that a little bit. We'll touch on that even more. It's definitely something that's important. Practice interviewing with career services, friends, family, whoever. I'm a huge career services advocate. It's kind of where I got interested in campus recruiting. I interned at my career center. It's it's included in your tuition. Use it. You're paying for it. You're paying for their services. Use them. They know what they're talking about. They talk to recruiters often. You guys don't see all the communication that we have back and forth with them. They know what they're talking about. So use them to your advantage. Use them for resume help. Use them for mock interviews, anything along those lines. Interviewing is a skill. You can get better at it. It's something you can, the more you practice, the more comfortable you get in that setting. As a recruiter, I do it all the time now, but, when I still remember my first interview, I completely bombed. It was awful. And it was for an internship in Easton, Pennsylvania. I could remember it, almost the whole part of it, because it was awful. It was a horrible experience. But I was a cocky, junior in college who was able to talk to anybody whenever, and I was like, I don't need to prepare. I can talk to anybody, right? This is gonna be easy. But, it is kind of hard to talk about yourself without preparing and answering some of those questions. So, even if you do kind of feel comfortable one-on-one conversations, prepare, practice, don't be a fool like me. When I get nervous, I tend to ramble, so that's kind of what happened in my interview. She would ask me, a question, and, I'd go to answer it, and then I start thinking, oh, well, I can answer it better this way, and I'd start talking about this now, and kind of going all over the place. And, you'll find that during the interview, the more specific you can be, the better it is. So, again, use career services, and it doesn't have to be just them. Ask your friends, ask your roommates. Heck, you could interview yourself in the mirror if you want. Just make sure no one else is around so they don't think you're a weirdo. Other big thing, confirming logistics. For this meeting today, I was double checking, 100 times because I just lost my phone. I don't have my email on my phone, so I was really nervous about getting here and being lost. So, even for an interview, it's even more important, obviously. Make sure you know where you're going. Check how long it's going to take you to get there. Don't ever be late to an interview, ever. There's no excuse for it, especially if you guys, I hear it all the time, more so in the city. Oh, the train was running late. Oh, I missed my bus. People, to be honest, people don't care. We have to commute into the city all the time. We think, we account for delays and things like that. Be early. If you're there early, go find a Starbucks nearby, go find a coffee shop, whatever. Sit down, hang out for a little bit, but at least you know that you can head over to the office with no issues about 15 minutes early, right? So definitely confirm logistics. Make sure you know where you're going. Plan what you'll wear. Dress for success. So a couple of things I'll mention with this. One, public accounting firms are definitely getting a lot, and I would say companies in general, a lot more relaxed with what you can wear to work. I wear jeans almost every day to work. This is actually a pretty typical outfit for me, other than I probably wear jeans. I classed it up a little for you guys. But just because we're relaxed with kind of what we wear, make sure you're going into the interview professionally dressed, okay? Planning out what to wear, something you probably don't think of, you know, maybe you'll just grab something the night before. If you know you have an interview or a few interviews coming up, try to figure out what you're wearing like a week before or a few days before, because when you go to put it on and it doesn't fit, right, because you've been hitting the gym too hard at school, you have a couple of days to figure out what you're gonna get instead. I ran into this opportunity actually when I interviewed with CohnReznick, so this wasn't that long ago. I hadn't worked at a public accounting firm. I hadn't worn a tie in 4 years probably, but I wanted to wear one for my interview. Put on a shirt that, you know, fits me great if I don't have to button the neck. So the night before my interview, I'm running around trying to find a shirt to wear for this interview. All right, so, and that just stresses you out, right? It may adds on an extra level of stress that you don't need. Or if you decide to wear that shirt, you're uncomfortable the whole time you're interviewing. So make sure you're comfortable in what you're wearing, and make sure it's professional. Printing out copies of your resume, always have more than enough. Usually they'll tell you how many people you're meeting with. Have one for, at least one for everybody. Bring extras. You never know how many people you'll end up actually meeting with while you're there. Leave with plenty of time to spare. We talked about that. Don't be late to an interview. It's a really, really bad first impression. All right. Any questions on before the interview, before we get there? You guys knew all this stuff? You're ready for all this stuff? Yeah, this is, you know, taking these, they're really minor, really basic, really general tips, but, you know, taking all these things into consideration, it's gonna make for a more relaxed experience while you're actually interviewing, which, you know, can be a very stressful thing. Dress for success, I touched on that, I'm not gonna go through this, you know, even more. Again, just make sure you're dressing professionally for your interview. Alright, so during the interview, the first impression counts. Be on time, greet each person with respect and professionalism, smile, make eye contact, shake their hand firmly. So the one thing I'll just add to this, you know, greet each person with respect and professionalism. Your interview starts as soon as you walk in the door of that company or that firm or wherever you're going. If there's a receptionist or secretary there, whoever, they're a part of the interview process. Make sure you're treating them with respect. You ride the elevator up with somebody, you know, make sure you're treating them with respect. Everyone is involved in the decision-making process. The company I worked at before I was at, my prior firm, would legitimately ask the receptionist on how that person came in and greeted them. So it starts as soon as you walk in the door. So always be professional, you know, no matter what. Stay calm, focus, breathe, relax. Again, doing those things beforehand, those pre-interview steps are going to help with that. Project a positive attitude. Never speak of previous experience in a negative light. To be honest, this happens a lot with college students, and it's something that, you know, I push you guys to not do. And it happens kind of in two different capacities. One being, you know, maybe you worked for somebody where, you know, the boss was a real jerk and you had a really bad experience. You know, don't bring that up during an interview, right? You know, stay positive about it. The other one is honestly more concerning to me is when students talk about, you know, I would say, you know, a summer job. Maybe they, you know, are a waitress when they're back home after school, or waiter when they're back home after school, and they say, yeah, I was just doing, you know, I was just a waiter. Right, I was just doing this. Play that up. There's plenty of skills and transferable skills that are going to be beneficial. You know, don't talk like, you know, it's not important. It was just, you know, it's just a summer job. You know, use that to your advantage. One, it shows work ethic. Not everybody's working when they go home from school. You know, in a job like a waiter or waitress, or someone working in like retail, you know, customer service comes into play big time. You know, fast-paced environment, right? Handling stress and pressure. All of those things, you know, come from a job like that. So don't talk negatively about, you know, any of your jobs. right? Speak of them in a positive light. Listen carefully. Know that it's a two-way street, and it's try to keep it more of a conversation. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by listening, to what they're saying. Always stay professional. One other note with being professional, a lot of firms will do what they call like group interviews or informal interviews, where you'll be, maybe it's a lunch with, some more junior level folks, or, for us, we actually have, in between your formal interviews, we have like stations where you'll meet with like 1 or 2 associate levels. And then it's a little bit more comfortable, it's a little bit more relaxed. You're able to ask questions geared a little bit more towards like you and coming out of school, and what the transition was like and what their role looks like as an associate versus a senior manager that you're interviewing one-on-one with. Those conversations do get very relaxed. I've sat in on them. Just remember, they have a job, you don't. You're there to get a job. So it's okay to be relaxed and a little bit more down to earth, or whatever, however you want to look at it, but make sure you're professional, because people have not gotten jobs because of their interactions during that, because they became unprofessional. It really doesn't put yourself in a good light. Always ask questions at the end. So always ask questions at the end. This is a really important part for you guys during the interview. And it's one of the most important parts. It's typically the last part of the interview. It's kind of your last impression you're going to leave on this person. Have questions prepared. It's okay if you write them down. No one's going to care. I prefer you have a few written down than you have none. So I always tell students have 2 to 3 safe questions. And what I mean by a safe question is a question you could ask anybody. Whether they're a recruiter, whether they're an auditor, whoever, you can ask them that question. So maybe it's, what brought you to this point in your career? What do you like best about the company? What's the culture? Whatever. Simple questions like that. Those are going to be, what I call a safe question. But then do your research. Know about the firm. Ask questions more specifically to CohnReznick, okay? Ask questions more specifically to the person you're interviewing with, right? So having kind of a combination should hopefully, make you guys feel a little bit more comfortable, but also allow you to really show your interest in that person and that firm, okay? If you want to get really crazy, ask a question that came up during your interview, right? So that shows that you're actually listening and comprehending what people are saying, and you bring it up at the end, and they're like, oh wow, they were listening to what I was saying. They're not just robotic, and they don't just have a prepared set of questions, right? It does show that that you're able to have more of a conversation, and it's not just somebody like talking to you. So any questions about during the interview? Asking questions?
So when you're talking to the associates, could you give a more specific example, where they cross the line?
Cursing. You shouldn't really be talking about going out to bars and stuff like that. I mean, whatever, you do, that's fine. You're in college, we get it, whatever. But it's an interview, be professional. The cursing was one of the more recent ones that I remember, and
was it bad?
I mean, it wasn't I'm not going to use it. I'm going to get videoed. I'm going to be on YouTube. Not to bleep me out. Any type of cursing, right, you shouldn't be doing it, in those settings. But again, it does get very relaxed. So I'm just warned. It is more of a conversation with a friend. So just be mindful. Those guys have jobs, right? You don't. You want a job. And if that's how you're gonna present yourself, when you should be presenting yourself in the best light possible, how are you gonna act when you're at a client site and you're feeling a little bit, you're starting to feel comfortable, right? So that's kind of the mentality they took. That was almost literally the conversation I had with one of the senior managers after that person left the interview. And that was kind of, you know, our take on him, was, okay, hey, this is where you should be the most professional, you know, putting your best foot out there. What's he gonna be like in, you know, a year from now when he's like real comfortable,
Right.
loose at clients, but we can't have that.
Right.
So, but good question. Any other questions on this during the interview? You guys have all been on interviews? Yeah? Alright. So answering questions, and what time do we have until? I just wanna make sure you guys save some time at the end.
We should really be, we have to be out of here by 5 of 6. We should start packing up by 5:45.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Alright, so answering questions, and I'll start to go through this a little bit quicker then. You know, listen carefully. If you don't understand something, ask for clarification. Don't just try to answer a question that you kind of heard half, you know. No one's gonna fault you. They'd rather you actually think about it and respond than you kind of just answering something off the cuff where you're not even sure what they are asking. Tailor your answers to the exact question, job, company. If you can do that, that would be great. Avoid negativity at all times. We talked about that. Avoid rambling. Again, this was my this was my thing, and it's because I didn't practice and I didn't, you know, really, you know, think about how I would respond to different things. So practice. Behavioral questions. These are going to be really common questions as well. So it's going to be kind of your resume and then basically behavioral questions off of your resume, right? So, yep. For example, you know, tell me about a time you worked in a small group and the role you played in that. You know, tell me a time you had to deal with, you know, a difficult group member or a difficult customer, right? Those types of questions are very common, especially for intern, entry level, summer leadership program, like type of questions, because you guys don't have a ton of technical experience. And that's fine, we're not expecting that. You know, once you move on to like manager level and you're going on interviews, they're gonna be asking you a lot more like technical based questions, like, you know, how would you do this, whatever. But for now, we're investing more in the person, right? We're investing more in the person that you are, because, you know, we can teach you the technical stuff if you want to be there and you want to learn, right? You know, it's a little bit tougher to teach some of these soft skills. Behavioral questions essentially show us how you've handled something in the past, and we're hoping that you're going to be handling it the same way in the future. And that's kind of what studies show, is that typically happens. So that's why have you guys gotten a lot of like behavioral type questions? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
They used to ask, try to give you tough gotcha questions.
I was actually just gonna ask if anyone's had any tough
I
like,
mean,
questions
I'm
like
a
that.
lot older than these people, so it was sort of common when I was there. Do they still do that anymore? I mean,
So I don't think it's as common as it might have been. We do have a couple, you know, partners or senior manager or higher level people that will, you know, ask questions like that. But I definitely don't think it's the norm, for sure. Have you guys had any like tricky, difficult questions?
I know my brother has, but he's like in investment banking, so like he gets those all the time. But I've never had one like that.
Do you know what the question was?
It was like some kind of brain teaser, like, it was for like, oh God, it was like something about like a cube and like shifting a cube or something. It was like a math question.
Yeah. So what I would say to got you or just strange questions, right, that have nothing to do with accounting or anything like that, the reason they're asking you that is to see how you respond. They're not necessarily expecting you to have the right answer. Okay, so I use, you know, I've heard a lot you know, how many ping pong balls or tennis balls would it take to fill this room?
Right. Yeah.
Right? How would you solve that? I have no idea. Right? I don't know, but I can tell you how I would start to solve that, right? I would say, oh, you know, great question. Well, a tennis ball has a circumference of basically an inch, right? And this room has an area of X, Y, Z. And so like that's how you would start to figure it out, right? I'm not gonna be able to give them the right answer, but they wanna know your thought process, and they wanna see if they can throw you off your game. That's all, right? So they're not expecting you necessarily have the right answer, especially, what we're asking them. It's your thought process through it. One of the weirdest ones I've heard was, what animal would you be if you could be an animal? She's shaking her head. See, I guess it's not as weird as I thought.
Oh, no, I had that one back in the 80s, yeah.
So it's, again, it's one of those questions where there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's, think about, you take the time to think about it, and you have a good explanation of why you want to be that. Or I've heard superheroes, I've heard Disney princesses, I've heard them all. Like that type of question, again, they want to know why. So have a good explanation. They want to see if they can kind of throw you off your game, make you nervous, how you respond to things like that. Any other questions about answering questions? No? So no one's gotten any weird ones like that? You guys have been lucky. Alright. There we go. So here's some, I think these are more common, but they are still kind of tricky. So, why do you want to work here? It's a really good opportunity to show you did your homework. The issue that students run into something like this is that the response they give is very, very generic. Where they could have said that whether they were interviewing for us or KPMG or Baker Tilly or whomever. Make it specific about the firm. One other piece of advice, if you're going to interview for CohnReznick, the only firm in the world you want to work for is CohnReznick. I don't care if the next day you're going to Ernst & Young, that next day, the only firm in the world you want to work for is Ernst & Young, okay? Just go in with that mindset, and it'll help you kind of to answer some of these questions and be more specific about, that firm. We get it. You guys are interviewing at multiple places, and that's fine. You should be. But when you're in that interview, have the mindset that that's the only place you want to go to. We've had people come in to interview who just don't look interested, aren't enthusiastic, because they're all set on that, hey, I have an interview with KPMG, the next day, that's where I want to be. KPMG doesn't end up offering them. We're not going to offer them. They didn't have a good interview, so now they're stuck without anything. It's more of an attitude thing than anything. So again, go with that mindset where this is where I want to be, no matter what. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So I'm not a big believer in the question, what are your weaknesses? Because you always get some like, well, I take on too much work, and so it's like, all right, well, so I don't ever ask that. I do know people do ask that. So think about that. Your strengths, really play on anything that can be effective or that is a transferable skill into the role you're going into. So I touched on the communication skills, community service, customer service, right? All those things are really transferable into public accounting. So when you're talking about strengths, focus on those types of strengths. Any questions on these? Now, so you're all going to be excited about any interview you get, right? So after the interview, as the interview is wrapping up, try to move on. If you want the job, say so. This just kind of goes back to like being excited, being enthusiastic about the opportunity. Let them know that you're interested in it. Make sure you're asking what the next steps are, and ask when the employer plans to make a decision, just so you have have an idea. In your guys' case, a lot of it happens very, very quickly. So I would assume it's going to be very shortly after, but you can definitely do that. Always follow up with thank you email. So People do like handwritten cards. I do. I'm a fan. So if any of you guys interview with me, you can send them my way. I do understand though that the timeline you guys have with interviewing, like during recruiting season, you know, is like 2 weeks, right? It's like every firm is like here within a span of a couple of weeks, right? So I'm not expecting a handwritten card, all right? Follow up with at least a thank you email to anybody you met with or anybody you interviewed with. Make it personalized. Do not send a generic email thank you. Take the time to make it personal. It means a heck of a lot more. You know, I don't think it needs to be long. Be brief, really short. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to meet with me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation about, you know, X, Y, Z. Looking forward to hopefully working with you someday. That's it. That X, Y, Z part is the most important part. Make it specific to the person that you interviewed with. If there's something that came up in conversation, jot it down on the back of their business card when you get that after the interview. Be like, hey, well, I can follow up with my email with like talking about this, or you know, whatever, so you don't forget. Handwritten cards. So I was kind of joking about this. One thing I would recommend doing though, if you're getting an internship, right, so you just interviewed, you've accepted an internship offer, that would be the time I follow up with a handwritten card. Okay, you've already accepted the offer, right, you got plenty of time to do this. Make a good first impression, okay? It's an internship, it's not a full-time job, okay? Look at the internship as an 8 or 10 week long interview, right? That's a great way to start off. Send it out to them. Hey, I just accepted my offer. I really appreciate you taking the time again, you know, to speak with me, and I can't wait to start this summer. That's it. That's all it has to be. People do like that. It shows you're really appreciative of the opportunity. So then, you know, if maybe you had like 7 or 8 interviews with different firms, you know, you're only sending a thank you card to probably 3 or 4 people, right? Just that one firm. So keep that in mind. I think it's just a really nice touch to kind of cap off that interview experience. Any questions after the interview?
Do you ever think it's worth responding to like a rejection email?
Yeah.
How do you?
You know, I really do appreciate the time like you spent. You know, if there's any feedback, I do think it's worthwhile, especially if it's somewhere you're actually interested in and working. You never know when something else could open up or anything along those lines. So I do think it's worthwhile kind of just reiterating, hey, I'm still interested. You know, sorry, it didn't work out now, but if something opens up in the future, you know, let me know. Don't burn any bridges. It's a very, very small, big industry. Okay, people talk a lot, and people move from firm to firm a lot. Recruiters talk all the time. So, you know, if you do something at one firm, chances are another firm's going to hear about it. So don't burn your bridges. You know, be respectful, appreciative of the opportunity, and just that's it. Anything else? Or?
Well, Pete would like us to, I'm sorry, Pete, the Metro people would like, they want to talk about the slides, so I'm going to go back and get us on that again.
Any other? After the interview? No? Good. That's all.
Are you guys there?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Can you see the slides?
Yes, we saw the slide.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, we are just kind of wrapping up here. I wanted to, see if you guys had any questions in regards to anything.
Actually, I do have one question. Large couple, but for dressing up for your interview, do you think there's ever a time when you can overdress for a situation?
If you are interested in public accounting or accounting in general, I do not think so. I have, in some tech firms, maybe, depending on the type of role you're going for, but I would always dress more professionally. Definitely within this industry, you should be dressing professional for your interview.
Okay. And then, second, for after the interview, do you think there's ever a time when you might seem, I guess, too clingy, or, I mean, you just like sending too many emails, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, actually, that's a good question, and I didn't bring that up here. So, one thank you email is enough. Now, if you're sending it to, let's say you had interviewed with a partner at the firm, you sent a thank you, and they didn't respond. Okay, I would not send a follow-up email. They got it. Okay, they appreciate it, and 9 times out of 10, they forward it to the recruiter, so they have definitely seen it. I wouldn't risk, follow up there. If you wanted to follow up with the recruiter, just about, hey, when are next steps, or when can I hear you guys expect to make a decision, I think that's fine. So just kind of know your audience, I guess I would say with that, and I wouldn't be sending multiple emails. They're very busy, obviously. They have a lot going on. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, they do kind of just forward that email to the recruiter so that, we know you sent it, they know you sent it, and we have it.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions came up throughout the presentation at all? No?
What's the weirdest you've seen?
The weirdest candidate I've seen? I don't know if I can talk about it. No, I mean, you guys, I would say for the most part, everybody is typically dressed professional. Everybody, is respectable. It's being mindful of kind of the situation you're in, right? It's an opportunity, for you to kind of showcase who you are as an individual. You always want to put your best foot forward. Like we, like we talked about here, just be mindful that from the moment you walk in to the time you leave the interview, you are being evaluated. You're being judged. Everything is going to be going into the debrief. So you keep that in mind. For those of you attending summer leadership programs, whether that's at our firm, any other firm, those are evaluations. Treat them as interviews. Go in with the mindset again that, hey, it might be a little bit more relaxed, it might be a little bit more fun, and it's okay to have fun at something like that, but be professional, be respectable while you're there. I think sometimes in those settings, students kind of lose sight of that. That's kind of what we were talking about with like those informal, more relaxed type of interviews. I think sometimes you kind of forget where you are, and people make you feel comfortable. I'm sure we could sit down right now and have a great conversation about whatever, right? And, that's kind of my job, is to get to know people, but also you guys need to know there is a difference between, somebody looking for a job and somebody who has a job there. Any other questions from either room?
I'm gonna ask, what are typical questions you like to ask during an interview?
Typical questions that I like to ask during an interview. So for me, I'm very conversational, as you can probably tell. I will almost literally go right through your resume and ask you, I'm gonna have you tell me about you more than I'm gonna ask you questions, okay? So, tell me about, this work experience that you had. Tell me about, your time in Beta Alpha Psi and what you do during that. Like, so for me, I'm more of trying to figure out who you are as a person. There's times in an interview where I really won't ask a question because you touch on what I'm looking for during that, right? If I'm gonna ask questions though, they are a little bit more behavioral based. I really focus on working in a group or team-like setting. I want to know about your experiences, maybe it's a group project, a case study competition, something like that. I wanna know how you kind of handled that situation. I ask about customer service. So if you have worked in retail, or you have worked at a restaurant or a bar, I'm gonna go directly there. If you haven't, I'll talk to you about how you dealt with, maybe you're a coach, or maybe you're an umpire, how you dealt with like a difficult parent, or a difficult situation where you had to kind of work with somebody to maybe calm them down in like a professional manner, and something along those lines I'll typically ask. And then I always leave a lot of time for the student at the end for an interview, or for questions. I want to hear, for me, I'm very interested to hear the type of questions you ask. I think it tells a lot about the person and their interest in the firm, and their interest in our conversation. So I try to leave, a good, almost like 10 minutes at the end for you to ask questions and for us to have a conversation. Because I think that's really important. For me, I think it helped me get a read on you, but I think it's also important for you guys. So I try to leave a lot of time, which means, if we're looking at a half-hour interview, I'm only like interviewing you for 20 minutes of that, right? So, know your resume well.
I found like a problem that I have is like, when I ask questions, like I find like the person, like the partner, the interviewer ends up doing like so much talking, and I'm just kind of sitting there, and it feels like, I know like you're told not to do that, so how do you kind of like?
So I guess I would be mindful of the questions you ask.
Right.
Know your audience. Try to make them maybe a little bit more specific.
Right.
To kind of get a response you're looking for. Yeah, people like to talk.
Right.
Especially at that level.
Yeah.
Ask a partner about how they got to where they are in their career. That's gonna be, it's like 40 years of work they can talk about, right? So maybe that's not a question you want to ask. Maybe you want to be more specific. Hey, why did you, start in public, go to private, and now you're in public again? Or, hey, I saw, from your LinkedIn, you were at Ernst & Young, what brought you to CohnReznick now? So that's kind of a way to hear about their career, but a little bit more direct, to hopefully get kind of to that point. So just be mindful, and again, questions are something you can think about beforehand, right? There's something you can prepare beforehand. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, people like to talk. And usually though, in those situations, if you still have questions, they'll let you ask them. They're not gonna like kick you out the door. Good. Any other questions? I just want to be mindful of the time. I know we have like 5. Probably should be starting to pack up. So, well, I can hang around for you guys here. Sorry over there. I guess I'm getting kicked out, but if you have any additional questions, you can certainly email me. I'm more than happy to spend some time on the phone or answer any follow-up questions that you have. But I appreciate you guys having me here. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we didn't have a sign sheet.
We did. Victoria did it.
Yeah, there was.